الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
الحمد لله ثم الحمد لله. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونستنصره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، إلها واحدا أحدا صمدا، لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. وأشهد أن نبينا وعظيمنا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وحبيبه. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين، وبعد. يقول جل جلاله في محكم كتابه: وآتاكم من كل ما سألتموه وإن تعدوا نعمة الله لا تحصوها إن الإنسان لظلوم كفار. This is the shortest khutbah of the year, as next week the time would have changed. It's going to change this Saturday night or Sunday morning. And obviously we can't run the khutbahs at 3:30 anymore because that will be well after Asr, basically out before Maghrib. I still don't think that the fatwa or the permissibility that Imam Malik saw for this issue applies for us here in Canada. So I'm going to keep Jummah before Asr. Next week we'll start at 2 o'clock. We'll keep it at 2 o'clock for a few weeks until Asr is after 3, and then we'll move it to 2:30 until they change the time back again in March. So we'll make some announcements. So if you're a regular attendee, you'll know what time to come in next week. This week is the last week before they change the clock, so we're always a little bit short on time. And since we're short on time, I chose the two largest topics that the Quran talks about regarding Quranic outcomes, which will make it impossible for me to actually cover this topic in any degree of depth. But really what I'm going to try and do today for you is to draw your attention to these two characteristics or character traits that the Quran talks about. And the Quran points out that they must change. You have to transform them from the way they are instinctively as a human being to what they should be. And he says, subhanahu wa ta'ala, in probably one of the most famous verses in the Quran. They're talked about a lot in the Quran. The concept of dhulm, for example, oppression, is talked about in the Quran 289 times. And jahl is the essence of why Islam was sent. The era that came before Islam is called jahiliyyah. It is the enemy of all goodness. It is the root of every evil. Ignorance. There's nothing that even comes remotely close to it in competing with the evil that it causes within this world. And the Quran talks about these things a lot, and I'm just going to draw your attention to some of the verses and maybe how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pointed them out to us. And probably one of the most famous of them all is the ayah at the end of Surah Al-Ahzab, where he says subhanahu wa ta'ala, إِنَّا عَرَضْنَا الْأَمَانَةَ عَلَى السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَالْجِبَالِ فَأَبَيْنَ أَن يَحْمِلْنَهَا وَأَشْفَقْنَ مِنْهَا وَحَمَلَهَا الْإِنسَانُ إِنَّهُ كَانَ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. In this ayah that the scholars, since the day it was revealed, to this day today, continue to discuss the profoundness of it and argue on exactly what is meant by certain parts of it. An ayah that is one of the hallmarks of the Islamic understanding of existence, of human existence, where he says, subhanahu wa ta'ala, indeed, we offered the amanah. Whether you understand amanah as your ability to choose freely, your ability to make a choice in this life, which is something that is a distinct difference between you and every other creation on this planet and every other creation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created aside from jinn. Or if you understand amanah as the pinnacle of human character or the pinnacle of principles, because trustworthiness is by far the most important characteristic or ethic that a human being can carry, which is why the Prophet ﷺ, when he walked through those gates the day they were rebuilding the Kaaba, and they had come to the point where a civil war was going to begin because of this, because of the Hajar al-Aswad, and they said, whoever comes through the door, Walid ibn Mughira said, whoever comes through the door, we will accept. And he walks through ﷺ, the words that you find in Sirat ibn Ishaq and ibn Hisham and al-Tabari and others, where they say, Al-Amin irtadaynah. Al-Amin, the trustworthy one, because nothing comes even remotely close. You could say, what about sidq? What about honesty? Honesty is the concept, the actual practition, the practicing of honesty is trustworthiness. That's how you practice it. Honesty is in words, is in attitudes, perspectives upon things. But then how do you translate honesty into action? That's what trustworthiness turns into. So whether you understand it as the freedom of choice or the pinnacle of ethics, it doesn't make a difference. The cosmos and the earth and the mountains and everything that we carry as powerful and beyond our ability to actually destroy or change or control, when they were offered the ability, the opportunity to take this upon themselves, to be given the choice of being ethical or not being ethical, the choice of obeying or disobeying, they said no, we would prefer not to. وَأَشْفَقْنَا مِنْهَا. They got scared of it as well. They thought this is very dangerous. You're giving us the opportunity, the ability to disobey, the opportunity to be unethical, to not listen, to have negative characteristics that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala despises and causes. That sounds like a risky thing to do. Even though we wouldn't do it, but it just sounds too risky. I don't want to put myself in that position. وَأَشْفَقْنَا مِنْهَا. They said no. وَحَمَلَهَا الْإِنسَانِ. And the human being accepted it. You're wondering when this meeting happened and how you missed it. This is not talking about a conscious acceptance. This is explaining the nature of the human experience. Every other creature was not equipped to be able to make this choice. No other creature was created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had the ability, had the foundation that allowed them to make choices, to distinguish between two different things, to have high ethics or not, or the opposite, except the human being. You and I are distinct in that way. We're unique. Again, the characteristics that the Quran talks about, the negative ones, are not for you to be ashamed of. They're not here we're not trying to shame each other. And they're not about embarrassment either. They're just about understanding. If you understand that by nature, I am zalum and jahul. I am someone who has tendency to oppress and transgress and be unjust. I have a tendency to be ignorant. If I understand that about myself, then I'm ahead of the game. I'm ahead of the game now because I know that there's something that is about me that needs to change in order for me not to fall into this trap. But the human being accepted this. The human being has the ability to either be Amin or not. The human being has the ability to choose freely, based on free will, whether they will obey Allah or say no to Him. Which is insane to every other creature. Every other creation of Allah is like, what is this human being? What are they doing? How do they say no to the King of Kings? How does any of them dare do that? Well, that's what they were given. That was the gift they were offered. And indeed, the human being, zalum, this derivative in Arabic, fa'ul, means it happens time and time again. Happens a lot. The Quran talks about nothing as much as it talks about oppression. And we are taught, it was one of the main principles of Islamic ethics, is that we are anti-oppression. You can say, no, justice is one thing. Righteousness is another thing. Anti-oppression is a third thing. To be anti-ghulm. Because sometimes it's hard for you to know where adl is. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes there's a case in front of you, and you don't know what is just here. Many judges will be stuck in this position where they have to give a judgment, and they don't know. It's too complicated. I don't know what they know that they stand for is that we will never oppress, that they don't want to oppress. If they can see oppression, then they have the target that they want to avoid within their lives. And that's what we have to do as Muslims as well. We are taught that oppression is the one thing that we should. The Prophet ﷺ tells us, في الحديث القدسي, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks, يا عبادي إني حرمت الظلم على نفسي وجعلته بينكم محرما فلا تظالموا. Oh my servants, indeed I have forbidden myself. I have forbidden myself from ever oppressing, from ever being unjust. And I have made it amongst you forbidden as well, so do not oppress one another. But it's a tendency. We can't help it. Or can we? See, the point of all these, this is the 7th khutbah on this topic. The point of all these topics that I've shared with you, Kanud and Kafur and Tamma and Halu and Manu and Jazua, all these words that I've used over the last 7 weeks. The question is, they're instinctive, understandable. Are they avoidable? Can we avoid them, or we just can't help it? Of course we can. Of course you can help it. But at the beginning, maybe it's not as clear as it needs to be. People have this monster inside of them that would love to oppress others. If they don't take time to tame it and change their mentality about human equality and righteousness and rights in general, then all it takes is opportunity. If they're given the opportunity with the upper hand over others, then they show it. It takes people with high ethics to go from being oppressed, granted by Allah the strength to control destinies, and then not oppress. Look at the Holy Land. The people who cried to the world about how they were oppressed, and the world listened. It's okay, you're oppressed. We're going to grant you what you want. Land, here's land. So now the oppressed have the ability to make decisions. It takes people with great ethics, with clear principles, with Quranic transformation of principles and character, not to oppress now the people who they have the ability to oppress. It's very difficult. It's very hard. As Muslims, we have to understand that about ourselves as human beings, that we have that tendency inside of us. That if we are granted the ability, then we'll become oppressive as well. No. This has to change. And he is jahul. The human being has ignorance. The biggest problem in our lives is that we don't know. Our issue with the future is we just don't know. If you could just draw things out for me for the next 20 years, tell me exactly what's going to happen, I sleep better. we all would. It would take away the joy of life. It would take away any form of motivation or need to actually do anything. But it's that ignorance that makes it so difficult. And it's ignorance that if you take this one topic, subhanAllah, you take this one topic and mix it with whatever you want, and evil will be the sum. The consequence, the result will be evil. Take wealth, add ignorance to it. You have israf and tabdhir. Take science and add ignorance to it. You have death and destruction. Take deen, take religion and add ignorance to it, and you have what we have today. Take politics, add ignorance to it, and we have what you watch every day. You just add ignorance to anything. It is a poison that is so potent that there's nothing that fixes it aside from its antidote. The two antidotes for these topics, right, for dhulm and for jahl, the human being, dhulum and jahul, he has to become adl. He has to be someone who seeks and pursues justice. He has to be someone who accepts justice on himself before he accepts it on others. He has to be in pursuit of righteousness, of haqq. And he has to be someone who seeks knowledge. Those two antidotes are way more powerful than we, I think, fully understand as human beings today, as Muslims. I don't think we fully understand the strength that exists within someone living their lives, standing by justice wherever justice lies, on whomever side justice is, refusing any ounce of dhulm to be expressed from himself through the time that he's going to be alive, and to refuse any ounce of dhulm to be to be expressed anywhere in the world without him standing clearly against it. A human being who continues to seek knowledge. Go to the beginning of the Quran, the first revelation. Will it surprise you that both these topics were talked about in that first revelation? Where he began his discussion, his conversation with Sayyid al-Khalq Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam by telling him, Iqra, read. Read as in read, the figurative meaning of read in English at least. It's not reciting the written word. The written word to recite that is utlu, that's tilawa. You recite the written word. Read is a word in Arabic, Iqra is a word in Arabic that's much wider. That has meanings that are 5 or 6 meanings that all come down to the concept of learning, of gaining experience, of seeking knowledge, of gathering information, of processing information critically, of benefiting from the wisdom of other people. That's what iqra means. If I tell you to read your life, that's how you understand it. You're not going to go look for a book. You're going to read your choices and what's happened to you and your experiences, what brought you to this moment. He was told, iqra, in the name of your Lord. To what? Everything. See, there's this ayah, this command, has no object. Iqra something. Iqra al-Quran. Iqra. No. In this ayah, it's just iqra. In the name of your Lord, the one who created the human being from a small clot of blood. And you always wonder why that clot of blood, because the human being is dhaloom. Because the human being has this tendency to be aggressive and transgressive and oppressive. Remember, you're a alaq. You're a small little piece of blood. Had your mother sneezed too hard, you'd been gone. You're very weak. There's not much to so why? Why is this? Why this behavior? Why this aggression? Where is it coming from? Iqra, read again. وَرَبُّكَ الْأَكْرَمُ, and your Lord is the most generous. Just do it. Just do it. And He's the most generous. الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. And then right after that, كلا, but most people don't do that. إن الإنسان ليطغى. The human being has the tendency to become طاغية. الطغيان is when you have the joy of oppressing. الطغيان is when it's systematic. It's not a one-off thing where you made a mistake and you oppress someone. No, طغيان is where that's how you're going. That's the choice you've made in life. You want to يطغى. الرآه استغنى. Once he sees himself in a position where he doesn't need استغنى, he doesn't need anything anymore. He feels he's eluded for a moment, that he doesn't need others, or doesn't need Allah, doesn't need people, or استغنى. Now he's ظلوم جهول. That's how the human being is. Until the Quran comes and changes that. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه يغفر لكم يا فوز المستغفرين. استغفر الله. الحمد لله وحده وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اتبع نهجه ووفى عهده. Inshallah, today there is the festival right after at 5 o'clock until 10. It is an alternative for what usually children want to do on this day. I understand it's cold and it's windy, but if you're able to participate, then you're welcome to do so. Otherwise, the halaqat will run as normal. Next week, a reminder, it'll be at 2 o'clock Jummah, so we'll have more time. This is the last week at 3:30 until the time turns back again or changes back again in March. I hope that was a benefit to you. واعلموا أن الله أمرنا بأمر عظيم فقال إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد وارض اللهم عن الأربعة الخلفاء السادة الحنفاء أبي بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي وارض اللهم عن أزواجه أمهات المؤمنين وعن آله الطيبين الطاهرين وعن صحابته الغر الميامين وعن التابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وعنا معهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات اللهم فرج هموم المهمومين ونفس كروب المكروبين وارفع الغم عن المغمومين وارفع الظلم عن المظلومين واحقن دماءنا ودماء المسلمين اللهم احقن دماء إخواننا المستضعفين في كل مكان احقن دماءهم في غزة فلسطين وفي السودان وفي اليمن وفي غيرها من بلاد الأرض يا رب العالمين ما علمنا منها وما لم نعلم اللهم رد المسجد الأقصى إلى رحاب المسلمين أخرج الصهاينة منه أذلة صاغرين ارزقنا أجمعين فيه صلاة قبل الممات يا رب العالمين وما ذلك عليك اللهم بعزيز ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون